guys, welcome to another episode of the Trading for Profits. Let's start off with the prices. Gold is currently sitting at $4,100 and Bitcoin is currently sitting at $96,000. So today I'm with my guest who is Carel. Hi Carel.
Hello.
So Carel is the co-founder of Luno. He's also behind MoneyBadger, the CEO there. So Carel has a fascinating journey that he would like to share us today. So Carel, let's start off with how it started with Luno. Mm-hmm. So back then, we know that the traditional banks already had a problem with crypto, with Bitcoin, all of those currencies. So how did the idea of Luno develop?
Mm-hmm. Well, it actually relates to exactly what you just said. So the banks at the time, they started looking at Bitcoin and these crypto tokens, and they said, well, we don't really understand it. A bank being a very risk-averse entity, they said, okay, maybe we should just learn and educate ourselves. And at that time, so this is now 2013, I was working for a company that's called SnapScan. Yes. So a lot of people will know SnapScan today, but back then it was just getting started. It was very new. And that was a project with Standard Bank, with the head of innovation at Standard Bank. And today SnapScan is owned by Standard Bank, right?
Yes.
So as part of this, one of the things that I've always had trouble with is the idea that if you want to innovate, if you want to, like, let's say you're a smart kid in high school or university and you want to make your own mobile application, the moment that it involves money, you needed some kind of like card payments, like a relationship with a PSP or a bank or something. And then as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to get those kind of access to those kind of tools that you need. So when Bitcoin came on the scene, I thought, this is something that has a lot of potential for innovation because it's open source. It means you can just download the code and you can get started, right? And it's like this global financial ecosystem that you can tap into immediately. And so as part of this SnapScan project, I pitched the idea to the Standard Bank executive and said, well, what if we do a little Bitcoin trial? Let's build a little Bitcoin wallet. And he loved the idea. I was quite surprised. And he said, let's build a wallet for the bank. You can log in with your online banking, you can buy, sell, you can send and receive. And then we did that. So that was like a little proof of concept we did for the bank. It didn't last very long because as soon as the risk-averse people in the bank found out about it, they said, well, we'll never launch this. Okay. So then at that point, we had this team that's been working on this Bitcoin wallet for a bank. So it was like very like a highly qualified team. We had Marcus Swanepoel, who became the CEO of Luno, Pieter Heinz, who became the CFO of Luno, and Timothy Stranix, who became the CTO of Luno. So that founding team was already sort of like very high like quality people. And we said, okay, what's next for us? Because obviously the banks are not good customers for this kind of software. Well, let's start something that's not a B2B, not business to business, but like business to consumer. Let's build a consumer product, which was the BitX exchange at that time.
Yes.
And then we found out that there was a massive demand for this thing. So we said, okay, cool, that's great. Now let's start to automate everything, automate trading, automate banking deposits and withdrawals, automate the order book and everything around it. And then BitX became Luno. So we built up a big enough company, it rebranded to Luno. Now it's like a global company. It's got like big offices in Cape Town.
Yes.
But I left in 2019. So I left a couple of years ago, about 6 years ago. And now I'm working on this new project called MoneyBadger.
Oh, you really touched on a critical point that you were part of the team of SnapScan. So during that time, you were one of the pioneers behind like the QR code systems, like paying with the QR code systems. So during that phase, how did you navigate around the merchants, telling them, oh, this is a new innovation. How do we use this innovation? Because the merchants tend to cling to what worked before, not a new innovation.
Yeah, so I think it's always important to understand the needs of the customer really well. So now that was definitely a challenge, because we're approaching a merchant and saying, you know what, here's this new form of payment, new form of accepting a payment with a QR code. At that point, a QR code was a very foreign and new thing, right? People didn't know about what this was. Nobody was paying with their phone. We didn't have Tap to Pay or Apple Pay or Google, nothing. So we had to convince these merchants somehow that this is a good idea and they should accept it at their shop. And we couldn't differentiate on pricing, because it still used card rails. That's one of the reasons I said to the Standard Bank guy, let's try Bitcoin, because it's going to be much cheaper for the merchant. So not differentiating on pricing. What we eventually found was that there were some merchants that had very niche use cases. So in other words, they couldn't solve the problem, the payments problem, with other solutions, and they found SnapScan very, very, very attractive, because they were like, this actually solves the problem for us really well. So I can give you an example. One of these places was a church, actually.
Church.
So so it was a massive church, a big church, and their problem was people gave cash, right? And they had like a number of missions. So let's say they had 5 or 6 missions, and you would put some cash into an envelope, and then mark it and say it's this mission, and they deposit the cash with the church. And that was like an admin nightmare for them, and they ended up with a lot of cash. And cash is dangerous. Didn't want that. They also couldn't use card machines, because now you can imagine, like, are you going to walk around the church with a card machine and everybody's tapping? Or even then, there was no tapping, right? So putting in a card, entering a PIN for every person is not going to work. So it doesn't scale. And then also, do you have a card machine per mission? How does it work? It's very complicated. And then SnapScan comes in and it says, well, it's very easy. We print a QR code for each mission, and the members of the church can simply scan the one that they want to pay, and then that whole church adopted SnapScan. So that's like one niche use case, and there's a number of these. Then what happened was you have these sort of like cornerstone, all these places where there's like a little bubble, and then you just expand that bubble until you eventually get to a point where there's more adoption and acceptance.
That's quite interesting, because we are seeing that similar trail going on MoneyBadger.
Yeah.
Because now with MoneyBadger you can just scan the QR code, and a lot of consumers, let me just say, a lot of people who have Bitcoin before, they didn't know that you can pay using exchanges, all of the stuff, and you guys made it possible. So can you tell me more about the struggles that you guys encountered during that time?
Yeah, look, you mean now with SnapScan or with MoneyBadger?
I mean with MoneyBadger.
Yeah, with MoneyBadger. So what's the biggest struggles that we face? So I think, look, if another aspect to all of this, if you're approaching a merchant, what is their main goal? Right, their main goal is to make sales. That's the most important thing for the merchant. So if you can go to the merchant and say that they will make more sales by adding this additional option to pay, to them that is a very simple business decision to make, right?
Yes.
And so I think where we were now with MoneyBadger is that we've actually got a lot of interest from payment service providers to add our bridge that bridges that gap between the payments ecosystem and the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I think the main problem here is to convince the merchant that there's a market of people that want to spend Bitcoin.
Yes.
That's the main problem. And it is a problem because most people that have Bitcoin, they want to hold on to it. They don't actually want to spend it, right?
Yes.
And so fundamentally that is the biggest challenge that MoneyBadger faced. The technology, we're strong in building technology. We've got many decades of experience doing that. That's easy. Even legal, regulatory, we've got dedicated people for that. That's not the problem. The problem is this plain and simple business use case and saying, like, how many people are there that actually want to spend the Bitcoin? And they were trying to change the mindset. And I know it's very controversial, but we can talk about that if you want. But that's the main challenge.
Let's talk more about the Bitcoin dilemma.
Yeah.
Because there's this Bitcoin holders dilemma. Some see it as a long-term investment. Some see it as what it is, a peer-to-peer cash transaction, whereby there's no middleman, there's no borders. You're basically not restricted to do that. But now we're having this dilemma. So how is MoneyBadger even approaching that, and what are your views even as well on that?
So I think for MoneyBadger, the way that it's approaching it is to show people that it's possible, right? I think, and that's sort of beginning to change that mindset. Firstly, just being able to or to see that you're able to spend Bitcoin on your day-to-day needs, fuel, food, medicine, accommodation, rates and taxes, electricity, all of that. So we're just showing that it's possible, first and foremost. And that already, I think, is a very crucial step.
Yes.
And then I think the rest kind of depends on people's own personal journeys. So what I mean by that is, when you first get into Bitcoin, probably the way that you get into it first for most people is they say, well, this looks like a good investment. It's like the most liquid and one of the best performing investments of the century, essentially, right? So they're like, I want a little bit of Bitcoin. So they start with that mindset and say, I want a little bit of Bitcoin. Now they've got a little bit of Bitcoin. And now here comes Carel and he says, well, now you should be spending some of that little Bitcoin that you have. And then it doesn't make sense, right? And that's true. So I think the first thing that I want to explain is that I'm not actually asking or saying you should be spending off your Bitcoin savings. You should differentiate.
Yes.
So you should have Bitcoin savings and your investment that you build up over time. But the longer you're in this sort of Bitcoin journey and going down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, for a lot of people, what starts to happen is that they say, well, I started with a little bit, but now I'm going to add more and more and more and more. And eventually, that Bitcoin starts to represent a much bigger portion of your life.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's really the people that we are currently sort of, the product that we're building is most useful to them, because they've reached a stage where they're saying, I have my investment, I have my savings, and maybe now even I'm starting to earn some Bitcoin. There's some opportunities, growing opportunities to earn Bitcoin. And what that means is that ultimately I only have Bitcoin to spend.
Yes.
Right? And that is a small but growing group of people. What differentiates them is that they're like very like it's a homogenous group. They've got a very close-knit community. You'll know this.
More like network effect.
Yeah, and it's a very strong network. It's not like, if you ask people, do you have a card? They'll have very little in common in between themselves, right?
Yeah.
But if you ask people here at Crypto Fest, do you have Bitcoin? Some people will say, no, I'm into, all these other altcoins.
Yes.
And some people are going to say, I love Bitcoin. I've done so much reading and research and learning on Bitcoin, and it's like it makes so much sense. You get these people that kind of like they're crazy about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin ties them together. So it's like that network. Maybe it's small, but it's growing, and I think it's valuable. And that's kind of, if you're a merchant, something to consider. You need to consider that there's now these people out there, and they're seeking out the shops that are accepting Bitcoin. This is like in Ikazi, right?
Yes.
The Ikazi guys in Mosselbaai, they are earning Bitcoin, and they go to the shops and they say, listen, we now have people that want to spend the Bitcoin. If you accept it, then you will get our money and not your competition.
Yes.
Right. So then it starts to become a more obvious thing for the merchant in terms of merchant adoption.
I wanted to touch more on the guys, particularly the Bitcoin Ikazi. We've seen a lot of groups as well. Bitcoin Platinum Pay. There's a lot of these groups. All of them, they are doing a significant in terms of Bitcoin adoption. So what are your thoughts on the likes of like the Bitcoin Ikazi, all of the adoption that they are making?
Absolutely crucial.
Yes.
Like, I don't think that Bitcoin can ever win if it is not for a bottom-up approach to adoption and learning, because fundamentally it's such a new thing and a new concept, and it really promotes this idea of sort of taking ownership of your own wealth, of your own life. It's a very scary thing, because if you deposit your money with a bank, then you're saying, I trust the bank, they're professionals and they know how to keep my money safe, and I don't have to worry about it, right?
Yes.
But now if you flip it around and you say, actually, I want to manage my own money, well, you're not a professional.
Yes.
You might make a mistake more easily. You might end up losing it if you don't know what you're doing. So it's like a lot scarier thing. And so how do we make sure that people can actually manage that? They join a community, a group of people that are already sort of educated and can pass on the message and the education, right? You can't do it in isolation. You need to form that part of that community, and that's the way that I think ultimately Bitcoin adoption grows on the ground level. And then what MoneyBadger does is it says, well, we'll support you from the top.
Yes.
So top down, we'll add like thousands of stores where you can spend it. But ultimately, all of this is only in support of the grassroots community campaigns from the bottom up to help them support their growth.
It's been a really fascinating journey. I remember that you were doing that pilot with Pick n Pay just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And now you have so many stores, like hundreds of thousands, so that have partnered with MoneyBadger.
Yeah.
So can you tell me more about that journey?
Yeah, okay. So it's a very, like, this whole thing is a chicken and an egg problem. Like, what comes first, right? The chicken or the egg? Is it first the merchant or the wallet person spending? How do we build this up? And this dilemma was resolved for us when Pick n Pay gave us a call, or they gave me a call, and they said, we want to add Bitcoin payments. Can we make this happen? And we tried it with Luno. So I was at Luno in 2017. It didn't work. So we tried the on-chain transaction, and it was too expensive, it was too slow, didn't work. And then, like I said, subsequently I've left Luno, and I started playing with Lightning technology. Lightning being this payments layer. It's still open source, but it's built on top of Bitcoin.
Second layer.
Yeah, and layer 2, off-chain. I was selling electricity vouchers using Lightning. And I realized that it actually solves all the problems that we had with the on-chain transactions. Like, it's very fast, it's very cheap. There's a lot of control from the merchant side. And then I said, they called me again, actually. They called me again in 2021, or 2022. And they said, can we try this again with the new technology? And I said, let's build a proof of concept to demonstrate it, because I think the tech has evolved to a point where it's going to work really well. Then we did that. It did work well, phenomenally well. We gave it to Kazi, so we deployed it in Mossel Bay for them to test it, because we knew there was a community already spending. Yes. And then there was the system worked so well that we said there's no reason to not deploy it everywhere. So we deployed it nationally. And that's cool. So we started with Bitcoin, Lightning, and Pick n Pay. And now obviously we said, okay, what's next? Either chicken, we start going to more merchants, but we only have a few Lightning people paying with Lightning. So it's that problem of, like, what are you actually selling to the merchant, right? You want to sell them a bigger group of consumers. So we said, no, let's focus on the payers. So let's add more wallets. So added Luno, added Valor, added Binance, and we're adding some more. So now suddenly we had access to potentially like millions of registered people with balances in crypto, not only Bitcoin. Yes. I mean, I'm personally anti-crypto, but to each his own. So then at that point we had access to a much larger audience. And then we started going back to the merchants and saying, okay, well, what's the quickest way that we can add a lot? So we can add them one by one, or we can reach out to their existing payment service providers, the likes of Zapper, the likes of Online, Peach, and Scan to Pay more recently. So we made deals with these PSPs, and we said, let's scale like that. So I've got like all the wallets, and I have a growing number of PSPs, and now the network is expanding quite rapidly thanks to this.
Quite really interesting. You touched on that. You were selling electricity on the Lightning.
Yes.
I'm just here wondering, like, how does that even work? I know that is a little bit more even technical, but how does someone even start to say, I want to sell electricity on the Lightning network? Okay,
well, look, there's a lot of ways to answer the question, but let's start with the problem that Lightning solves.
Okay.
So this is a good example of the problem that on-chain doesn't solve, and that Lightning can solve.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're selling electricity vouchers, right? Prepaid token, enter it into the machine,
Yes,
right?
Yeah, that's right.
You need to find a wholesaler that sells that electricity token to you as the distributor or the vendor, right?
Yes.
So you go to the likes of Blue Label Telecom or Smart Call or OnTech or whoever. There's a bunch of wholesalers of electricity tokens. And then what they'll typically tell you is, okay, you'll give us the meter number, we'll give you a token, right? So they issue a token, and then obviously you owe them money because they vended it to you, and then you can give it to the person you sold it to, right? So the problem was, sometimes after the payment has been received, and now you go to the wholesaler and you're requesting a token, the wholesaler tells you, sorry, there's a problem. Okay? That could be the meter number is not supported, or your balance is too low, or there's some technical issue, there's an internet outage, whatever. And now you're actually in quite a very difficult position as a seller, because what do you need to do now? You need to return the funds to the payer. So the problem with on-chain, firstly, is that you cannot return funds to the wallet that sent the funds. You can't do that because sometimes the wallet that's sending it is a group wallet or pooled wallet. Like some of the exchanges use these pooled wallets to send funds out. And so if you return funds to that wallet, it goes unallocated. Nobody knows who it belongs to. Secondly, sending it back on-chain is expensive. Now you're paying a chain fee. So it's expensive, it's slow, and it's unreliable. And that is actually the main problem with payments, is that voiding or cancelling of the transaction. And so what Lightning does really well is you can take the payment, then you can ask for the token from the wholesaler, and if they tell you there's some kind of problem, then you can cancel or void the Lightning transaction. And the funds are automatically returned to the buyer. And that is the power of Lightning and why it works well for payments.
Quite interesting. So can you tell me more, what's the future now for MoneyBadger?
Future for MoneyBadger.
Yes, what's the future?
So ultimately what we want to do, and I know this is like, it sounds crazy, but we want to challenge Visa and Mastercard, right? Everybody's complaining about them and the fees that they charge. Everybody's saying that we spend so much on card fees, it's so expensive. But what's the alternative? Even cash is expensive. If you have to manage cash, you've got people with like armed guards and vans driving around. It's expensive. Cash management is expensive. Cards are expensive. But what is not expensive? Well, Bitcoin Lightning and Bitcoin crypto wallet payments are not expensive. So we're saying, well, let's position ourselves as a competitor to the card payments. We use the QR format. You can scan a QR code and pay. And so ultimately we want to cover as many shops in South Africa as possible. That's the goal, and position it as a competitor to, alternative to Visa, MasterCard. And then the next step after that, which we're already starting with, is to speak to the merchants and say, well, when might it make sense for you to receive ultimately your funds in Bitcoin?
Yes.
And so some of them might say, we've got international suppliers we need to pay, so it makes sense. Give us some Bitcoin or some USDT, some stable token, and then we can use that to pay our suppliers. So now we're going to again to look for these niche use cases, these like the church with the QR codes. We're going to go look for those merchants where it makes sense for them to receive settlement, to receive their funds in Bitcoin or some other crypto token. And then I think that's going to really help solidify sort of the whole value proposition, because it's like you can get payments from this dedicated group of people for cheaper, and you can get it in a form that's a lot more versatile than the rands in your bank account. Right? So that's kind of generally the medium-term future that we have in mind. But ultimately, the long-term future is to enable you and everybody else to live their life on a Bitcoin standard.
More like a medium of exchange.
exactly like a medium of exchange, form of money.
Okay, so let's say I'm someone who watches this and I'm interested in Bitcoin. So what's your best advice on how to get started? And
Yeah.
because now we're on another phase now, because previously it was just about, oh, is this real money? Now MoneyBadger's money is to show that you can really use Bitcoin. So we're going to that phase. So how can someone who wants to get started manage to even say, I want to use MoneyBadger to pay? It's like something like that.
Okay, yeah. So if you're getting started, there's a number of ways that you can begin.
Okay.
If you just want to get started and you just want to play, then sign up with Luno, sign up with Valor, sign up with Binance, get a wallet, fund the wallet, buy some Bitcoin, and then go to like a Pick and Pay or someplace with a QR code, ask the teller for the QR code option. What we're finding obviously is that in a lot of cases the person accepting the payment doesn't even know that they can accept Bitcoin.
Yes.
And even with QR, they're like, okay, not a lot of people use it. But if you are just like polite and you ask them, please, if you have it, if they're a Zapper merchant, whatever, they'll show you the QR code, scan the code with your wallet of choice, and then see what it's like. Just have the experience. I think it's actually very important to have that first experience and see what it's like. Then then your mind starts to think a little bit more about sort of what the implications are, but just have that first experience. But what I'd really recommend, if possible, is to look for a local Bitcoin community in your area, and then join somehow. Like even if you're just joining a chat group, whatever. Typically what you'll have then is you'll have the community recommending that you not sign up with one of these wallets, but rather that you open up a Bitcoin Lightning wallet. And they'll recommend you a wallet like Blink. Blink's very easy to use. Probably in South Africa, Blink is the best one today. Might not be tomorrow, but today, because they added the South African merchant QR codes directly into the Blink app. If you use another wallet like Wallet Satoshi, now it's a little bit of a problem because Wallet Satoshi can't read South African QR codes. So what do you need to do then? You need to install the MoneyBadger application. So you'll install a MoneyBadger app, and then you'll scan the code, and then MoneyBadger launches that wallet of choice. But really, I think the easiest is install Blink Wallet, talk to the people in the community, get some Bitcoin on Lightning from them, and then go with Blink and scan and pay. And now it's a very different thing because you're starting to think, oh, okay, well, maybe I don't really need these guys that are like banks. Is it possible for me to have electronic cash, like money that's only in my pocket? So let's say it's on my phone, and if I lose my phone, it's gone, right? So it's kind of like your own responsibility, but it's never touched an institution. So it's your money, it's on you, like cash in your wallet, but it's electronic cash in your mobile wallet, in your digital wallet. And that's quite a powerful experience to have at that point in time, because then you're spending like money that's electronic, purely electronic, from your own wallet, that's not controlled by anyone else. And that, then I think that's sort of where you start to go really deep into the rabbit hole.
Yes.
And then there's a lot of crazy stuff that comes out of that.
Having your own keys.
Exactly, your own keys.
So you briefly touched on like the stuff. So I have had an experience whereby I've been using MoneyBadger, the app, to pay at multiple merchants. So the tech is really good. The process is sweetening fast, but the problem is usually that we face is that there's the staff. The staff will say, I want to pay with Bitcoin. They absolutely know nothing about it. Sometimes they even backlash you.
Yeah.
So how is MoneyBadger trying to solve that, or what's the strategy behind that?
Yeah, that's a very difficult problem. If you talk to somebody about Bitcoin, in general, there's a lot of people that have had bad experiences with Bitcoin and crypto. Either they or their friends or their family has gotten scammed, right? Now you're coming to them and say, hey, can I spend Bitcoin? They just think scam. Right, so there's like going to be a long period of education for sort of the general population to start thinking differently about Bitcoin and not Bitcoin is a scam. Until then, I think it's really up to members of the Bitcoin community to help with this process.
Yes.
So I'll talk about what MoneyBadger does, but I think ultimately the best thing is to have empathy and patience with the person behind the till, because
Yes.
they're helping you.
Yes.
And it doesn't help to tell them, hey, I'm paying with Bitcoin, and if they give you backlash, whatever, then you get upset.
No.
No, rather approach it in a respectful way and say, hey, I heard I can pay with Bitcoin here. Is it true? They might say, no, it's not true, or I don't know. And then you can say, well, do you have QR payments? Do you have Scan to Pay or Zap or whatever? And then they might say, oh, actually we do. And then you say, look, I can show you. Then it's a very positive interaction. You can teach them something, right? Instead of the backlash, hopefully not. But so what does MoneyBadger do? Right? At the moment, what we're doing is we're trying to partner with the PSPs like Zapper, and we're sending people out into the field,
Yes.
going out and talking to merchants out there. Some of them are Zapper clients and some of them are not. And in the case where they are Zapper, the idea is for us to educate them.
Yes.
But our reach is just so much, it's limited. So really the best way to do this is to encourage the community and give them good guidelines on how to train or like engage with staff and learn them or teach them.
This is quite an informative thing, because in terms of the whole community being behind the whole adoption, it's quite a crucial thing. What's even much more crucial, it's even like when we go and pay with Bitcoin, it's also a form of proof of work. Because once those staff, they see that, oh, these guys, this is really works, and it tends to create this kind of network effects, whereby those effects as they create their own troops, like this troop that we have right here, the Bitcoin troops, all of these troops, and the more we go, the better. So we're still on the right view.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Carl.
Maybe just one last point on that. If you consider how powerful that experience is when you do your first Bitcoin payment and it works, there's another person on the other side, the teller, that's accepting it, and for them as well, it's that new experience can be quite powerful.
Really so powerful, because it also removes such connotation. Oh, Bitcoin is scam, is this and that, because they are real.
There are scams. Yeah,
there are scams. There's a lot of scams. So even, let's say you're someone who's been scammed and you still be more skeptical. So what advice would you have even for those people as well?
Oh, for those people?
Yes, because you are someone who has a lot of knowledge around fintech, banking, and even crypto exchanges.
Yeah, so, look, I think the problem there is that when a trust relationship is broken, it's very difficult to repair.
Yes, you're right.
So like, I don't blame somebody that has been harmed because somebody tricked them to take a negative view. That's just the reality of the way things are. I think what I can say is that the way that we try to approach it is a way in which you are fairly protected. So I know if you're like a hardcore Bitcoiner, you're going to go with Blink and all of that stuff. But if you do go with the guys like Luno, Valor, they put a lot of effort and energy into trying to protect you. There's a lot of communication that go out about new scams and stuff. So I think the environment is definitely maturing. Regulations are also maturing around Bitcoin and Bitcoin payments. Hopefully we don't see the likes of another MTI in South Africa. Like MTI was a massive Ponzi built on Bitcoin. So hopefully, I think as the industry matures and as people's understanding matures, then there will be more acceptance. But yeah, if somebody got scammed, I think it's the best is just to have a conversation with them, understand what happened, and show empathy.
Because on the scamming part, I was more particularly on how to avoid them.
Yeah, how to avoid scams. Well, firstly, if somebody tells you, give me some Bitcoin and I'm giving you more back, don't trust them. Like, that's a super big red flag. And it sounds stupid when I say it now, right? It's like, yes, obviously. But, I mean, MTI collected billions and billions of rands from people, promising them that give us some Bitcoin and we're going to give you a nice return. Like, I don't even remember what they promised. I think it was like 20% a month. Right? So give us some Bitcoin, we're going to give you back more. Be very skeptical of that situation. And then there's other scams. I've seen people lose a lot of money because they get a message like, oh, they won something, like they won some lottery thing, or they won something that they won. Some prize, but now they first have to pay to collect the prize, right? So there's a whole bunch of scams like this where the idea is just the scammers trying to convince you to give them Bitcoin. So don't trust random people, basically. And don't get desperate. Don't be like, I can make a quick money here. Anything that sounds too good to be true probably is not. Yeah, it's too good. Yeah, it's probably not. Yeah.
It just goes back to the communities that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because when you have a community, you avoid this side of such things.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Carl, for having you
Cool.
today. It was a great time with Carl today. Thank you so much. Catch us for the next one. Thank you.